Hi, it's Dr. Fox, licensed psychologist in the state of Texas. In this video, we're going to talk about fight, flight, fear, or freak out response. And we're going to talk about how individuals with personality disorders or personality disorder traits can be particularly influenced or overcome with these emotional responses. So stay with me. Let's check this stuff out. And please like, share, and subscribe and comment. That would be great. So let's get into it. Now, individuals with personality disorders have a significant difficulty in establishing and maintaining relationships that require good affect regulation. Now, they seem to withdraw from and sometimes alienate others and or engage in confusing and disorganized types of relationships. Now, this characteristic is observed in personality disorders as it relates to dependency inside these relationships. And many of these relationships have been cultivated or developed, particularly these patterns or beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that the individual develops as they have developed from childhood into adulthood. And these relationships can include work relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships, and friendships. And individuals with personality disorders, what they tend to experience is a disparity in power and vulnerability. And when individuals that are along a personality disorder spectrum, such as BPD, borderline personality disorder, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and other personality disorders, dependent personality disorder, obsessive compulsive. We could go through the whole list, but I think you get it. And what happens is that this disparity in power and vulnerability, it gives rise to this sense of threat and fear. And that's where the individual tends to experience, and you may experience this as well, as this fight, flight, freeze, or freak out response. And the reason why that I add this fourth one, this freak out component, is because I think that many individuals with personality disorders do experience this. It's this buildup of ongoing stress, pressure, fear, and threat. But what happens is that even though there may be an identified trigger in some instances, many individuals along the personality disorder spectrum experience a perpetual sense of threat and fear due to their perceived lack of power, and which comes with that, this sense of vulnerability. So it's a sense of hypervigilance, and due to this heightened sense of hypervigilance, due to a lack of power and this sense of vulnerability, then they're always on the lookout. And when you're always on the lookout, then you have this emotional response, right? So when it gets triggered, do you fight? Do you go at others? Do you freeze? Are you frozen in place? Are you petrified? Do you flight? Do you take off, maybe end relationships, quit a job, just walk out, stomp out? Or do you freak out? And when we talk about freak out, even though obviously that's a colloquial term and we're talking about clinical issues here, that freak out could be attacking yourself, could be isolating yourself, could be withdrawing, could be self-harm, could be some of those default thoughts. And a lot of individuals with personality disorders, their default thoughts are to harm themselves. So, and it becomes this reactive, this almost instinctual, immediate reaction. And there is a way to control it. And that is what I particularly want you to hear today in this video, is that you can control it. But it's important to realize that not only are you primed, and when I say primed, that means that we are preparing, our mind, our body is preparing for some type of response. Hence, fight, flight, freeze, or freak out response. So what we want to do is we want to build our awareness into this priming. So when you get primed, how do you feel? What is not only your thoughts, but also your emotions, but also what's happening in your stomach and in your chest? Does it get tight? Does your heart rate increase? Do your palms get sweaty? Is it almost like a mild panic attack? But that priming, because individuals with personality disorders, that these issues tend to be more chronic. They're not as acute and isolative to specific instances. So when they are across multiple contexts, your priming is cumulative. So it starts to build, right? It's like one Lego on top of another on top of another. And this priming can become very, very intense and very, very thought driving, fear driving, sense of vulnerability driving, which pushes you to do that. So first, ask yourself, what are my identifiers that I've been primed? Now, even this video may be priming you a little bit. What's going on in your chest and in your stomach? What's going on in your head? What kind of things do you think about? What are your default thoughts? Is it that I'm not good enough? Is it that I'm a failure? Is it that I'll never succeed? Is it that I'll always be alone? And these are just some common chronic thoughts that a lot of individuals that I work with tend to experience and that they're always contending with. And what about when you imagine that, when you have that picture in your mind and those thoughts are driving those things, and the instance hasn't even happened yet because we're still in that priming phase. So when you have that in your mind, what pictures or images are going through your mind? What does that aloneness look like? What does that loneliness look like? What does that rejection look like? What was that isolation look like? And it's important to recognize that. These are all priming instances. So during our priming phase, what I want you to do is I want you to challenge those images that are in your mind. If you see yourself as alone, see yourself then as perhaps with someone else. It doesn't have to be a group of people. It doesn't have to be a party or anything like that, but with others. How can you be around others? And it doesn't have to be a social engagement. It can be at a coffee shop. It can be walking around like a mall or somewhere that is populated, just to be around others and recognize that you are in control of your own power. You, in many ways, can determine that sense of vulnerability, particularly as an adult. When we're younger, and a lot of my clients experienced different types of assaults when they were younger, and they didn't have the same power and influence that they do as an adult. But if you are an adult or even a teen or a little older than teens, recognize that you have more power and control, that you don't have the same level of vulnerability that you did when you were younger. And we're still in that priming phase. These are these things that keep you perpetually primed. So when you are perpetually primed, it's harder for you to reason responses. It's harder for you to think, okay, so if he or she doesn't text me back, if he or she doesn't show up on time, if he or she this, that. We're operating on a lot of what ifs, not what is. What ifs tend to be the root of a lot of anxiety. What is are factual information that we can base our response on. And that's how you can control it. Controlling the priming, recognizing that there is a chronicity to your priming, particularly if you're along personality disorder spectrum, or even if you have a preponderance of traits, recognizing that priming, reframing a lot of those thoughts and images that you have, and then pushing back against it, just like we talked about a moment ago with that aloneness. Then what we want you to do is want you to help manage that behavior, control that behavior. And how do you do that? You build that sense of awareness and understanding that you control your life, that you have more power than you did when you were younger, perhaps during instances of abuse or neglect. And now you control that sense of direction in your life, that sense of positivity in your life. It is not and does not need to be based on external validation. And I have a video on external validation. I'll put the link here, because remember that internal sense of power, of loss of power and vulnerability is often based on things we learned when we didn't have a lot of power and control of our life. And now, hopefully you're in a situation where you do, and you can influence your life. And that sense of threat and fear, you can handle it if it comes up, because that's how we're managing the prime. So if instances of threat and fear do arise, you can handle it. And if you need someone to help you, this is where a mental health provider can be really, really helpful, and to help guide you in a particular direction. Build that sense of self-efficacy and control, because individuals that are along personality disorder spectrum often experience this, just as I talked about, this sense of being withdrawn from and this sense of alienation and this affect regulation that actually disrupts relationships, that tends to make it difficult to have the relationships you want to create the stability that you're seeking. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. That would be great. Check out my other videos. That would be wonderful too. And I wish you all the best, and please take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.